With a new house, new cars, and our wedding looming soon, we were looking to settling into a good life with each other. Of course, not everything was perfect. We still disagreed, but were we able to talk it through and never went to sleep angry with each other. For the honeymoon, I booked 6 weeks off. We planned a top-of-the-line cruise from Sydney to Honolulu in one of the nicest suites on one of the nicest ships that sailed the Southern Hemisphere. What was better was that Diana was banned from devices and disconnected while on board the ship. After that, it was just going to be us. The months moved by at a lightning pace, and suddenly it was time for me to get married. The wedding day was clear and warm as I stood at the altar waiting for my bride. I felt the butterflies that I am sure that every man gets right before they tie the knot. Jack noticed. "Don't worry, buddy. There is always time to run," he laughed, and Greg, standing beside him as one of my other groomsmen because you couldn't have a brother and not have him be there, chimed in, "Yeah, mistake, run now, and Dad and I will take care of her and all your money for you." Jack elbowed him. Just then, the music started, and Diana appeared. After a few minutes of getting herself in order, she walked down the aisle on Norman's arm. As she had no living family, he had been overjoyed to accept the role of walking her to me standing at the altar. Norman had one daughter who was a young teenager. He was dreading the day he had to do the walk and saw this as good practice. They both made it down without incident. As the ceremony progressed, we took our vows. When the minister asked if anyone objected, we heard a grunt just as we saw Mom grab Dad's hand and squeeze, but that was it, and we were married. The reception was terrific. Diana had played to my taste buds, and in place of a standard wedding reception buffet or set menu, she had hired some of the best pitmasters from all over the state. We had a barbecue off. 3 different crews had set up 2 days ago in a field that we hired just for the reception, and they brought seasoned smokers to create ribs, pulled pork, sausages, and wings, along with sides of cornbread, slaw, and chili fries. It was a reception where almost everyone went home happy. Even my father would have to admit that the food was good. As the evening progressed, we cut the cake, performed the bridal dance, and did the rounds together and separately for a while. I spoke with everyone, making a circuit around the room, and Norman and I even interviewed a reporter about how marriage would help us innovate. I have no idea what I said, but I'm sure it was good because everyone was smiling. However, not long into my discussion with the reporter, I noticed that my parents made their way to my new wife. During the last part of the interview, the reporter thought I was missing my new bride, as my eyes kept cutting to her as I focused on Diana talking to my parents. It was the only time that day that she looked upset. My father looked to be saying some harsh words, and my mother looked like she was trying to hold him back. I excused myself, walked over to them, and heard my father finishing his lecture at my new wife. "Just don't you forget what you owe us, or make sure that the boy does," he said. I jumped in. "Just what do you think my darling wife owes you, Dad? And why would you need to make sure I know it?" The 3 of them noticed us. Mom and Diana blushed, and Dad looked like he was about to explode, but before he could, Mom jumped in. "Your dad, who has had one too many to drink tonight, was expressing how we introduced you to Wow, nice save, Mom," I thought. I was going to question it, but Diana looked at me embarrassed. There was more to the talk, but she asked me to let it go with pleading eyes. "Not a problem, but if you will excuse us, Mom and Dad, we need to finish a couple of things and head off to say our goodbyes so this party can break up." Diana grabbed me, and we walked back to Norman, where Jack, Cindy, and Norman's wife, June, had joined him. We went through the traditional throwing of the bouquet. Cindy caught it. I slapped Jack on the back, but he smiled and whispered to me that he had already bought the ring. After our goodbyes, we climbed into the limo that work had hired for us. I stood up through the sunroof and waved to everyone as we left. When we got to the hotel, I think I spent almost an hour helping Diana get out of her dress, but it was worth it. Now, husband, where were we? That night, we made love, consummating our marriage, but it was slow, and neither of us went for any record. We were both tired from a long day, but we fell asleep content and happy. The next day, we flew to Sydney and were chauffeured to the cruise ship. We were classified as VIPs due to what we were paying, so we got to board anytime we wanted to and had people take care of everything for us. We decided to board early, and while everyone else was boarding and getting settled, I ordered us a couple of cocktails and sat down with Diana on our balcony. Our butler, yes, we had a dedicated butler just for us on this trip, delivered our drinks, and we relaxed, just settling in. I thought it was an excellent time to address the end of the reception last night. Diana, are you okay? Last night at the reception, I felt like something was going on in the conversation with Mom and Dad, so I interrupted, but I'm out of the loop. Diana blushed, took a sip of her drink, took a deep breath, and sighed. You're right, Harry. There was something there, but unfortunately, it's not my place to say anything. It's theirs. But the part that you walked in on was your father pressuring me. Now, we're married, for you to give them part of your business. I don't want to lie to you, honey. They say that if I can convince you to do that, they will not tell you some secrets that they have that they believe will destroy us. But still, you in particular, she held up a hand. I don't know everything, but I do know enough to know that it would hurt you. But as I said, it's not for me to say. It's them. And telling you without them would cause us more harm. She looked a little downcast. I'm sorry, my love. This is not how I wanted to start our honeymoon. Please understand that I love you so much that I am fighting for you against the ill will they have, particularly your father. I never want to see you hurt, so I will stand in the gap, and hopefully one day they can tell you. I'd been married one day, and we were already into the heavy territory of marriage trust issues. But as we sat and sipped our drinks, I knew in my heart that Diana loves me fully and completely. We sat for perhaps 5 minutes as I tried to rationalize my thoughts. On one hand, my wife didn't want to tell me something because she was scared for me and thought telling me a partial truth that wasn't her story to tell would hurt me. On the other hand, she was my wife, and we needed to trust each other in everything. I decided that I would travel the more complicated path of trusting my wife, even though it hurt. I can admit this makes me upset. There is a secret here that involves me, my family, and somehow you're also involved. She nodded, and I sighed. However, I am going to trust you. I believe that you want the best for me, for us. I am a little fearful, but as long as you stay by my side and help, I will let you lead the way in this. She got up off her chair and came and sat on my lap and kissed me. My husband, my love, I am sorry to have to do this, but I want the best for you. And telling you what I do know will cause more pain and not help, so I need a little time to get this sorted for you. Again, she kissed me, but this is not the forum for such a conversation. This is our honeymoon, and I believe that you owe your new wife some ravishing. So, I did. A little over an hour later, our initial lust satisfied and feeling a little better, the dark cloud of my family pushed back over the horizon. Diana and I walked hand in hand out and around the ship. At first, our butler Phil escorted us. Then, however, we excused him to explore ourselves. Those first few days were magical. We spent time sunning ourselves, hanging out in the spa, we took in shows, got into a few matches of shuffleboard and table tennis. The ship stopped at islands, and we got guided tours of tropical locations. Diana had bought a sexy navy blue sports bikini. It sat tight on her toned body, and the bottoms pulled in a little tighter around her hips, exposing more flesh than a usual bikini but keeping her modest. I was a little jealous but proud, seeing more than one guy and even a few girls turned their heads to stare as she walked by. I must admit that the most fun we had were the evening themed parties. Everyone would dress up to the theme, all white, back to school, Gatsby. Great fun! We also got invited to dine with the captain as VIPs, then got a tour of how the ship ran behind the scenes. And of course, we made love every day, at least twice a day. We made love. In fact, it was on one of the shore days when we had come back from the beach, and Diana had taken off her swimsuit, that we both had an experience that we both loved, loads of sex. For the rest of the trip, we were just a couple in love on our honeymoon. We spent most of our time together, and I don't know that I have ever had as much sex as I did while we were on that boat. When we disembarked in Honolulu almost a month later, we were tired but relaxed, feeling like a newly married couple. I had booked us 2 nights in an excellent hotel to end our trip, a penthouse loft with views back over the water and the city. The first day, we slept and pretty much waited for the world to stop swaying. If you have ever been at sea for any time, when you get back to the land, the world sways back and forth as your body adjusts. Sleep helped a lot, of course, holding the love of your life. The second day, we hung out by the pool and spoke about what we would do when we got back. Diana was only a couple of subjects shy of completing her college degree, and she was hoping to spend some time looking for a job. She knew that she didn't need to work from what I made, but she also wanted to stay active and find a way to contribute before we settled down to have kids. Financially speaking of kids, we both agreed that we wanted them sooner rather than later, and that once we got home, Diana would go off the pill, and we would start trying and let nature take its course. We both felt we were old enough for kids and wanted to ensure we were still young enough when the kids left home to keep doing things together. We talked about completing our dream house, which was being worked on, and we would be able to move in a couple of months. We loved the ideas of barbecues and our kids' birthday parties by the pool. That got Diana horny, and her maternal instinct started in, more sex for me. The next few months were amazing. We loved being married, and we made love all the time. We also spent a lot of time with Jack and Cindy, Norman and June. The house was finished, and we moved in, even though the pool and landscaping still needed to be done. Upon my return, we had more orders than ever at work, and all our sites were running at capacity. I was doing about a week a month away from home, 2 of those trips international on average. However, each time I traveled overseas, Diana came with me, unwilling to leave my side. Having the money helped to afford her to travel with me easily. During the day, while I worked at whichever site I was at, she would sit in my office and work on little projects, designing for the house or emailing people in support forums. Using the benefits of our counseling course, she also talked to a lot of the admin staff on site. They were always friendly, as it's never a bad thing to be on the good side of the boss's wife. Sometimes she would go and visit landmarks, being driven around by one of our staff. We were having a ball, and in some ways, it was a continuation of our honeymoon. When we got home, we got to planning our lives. We still headed up to the monthly family gathering, however, we only got there once every few months, so busy was our schedule. Another notable thing was that Diana and I agreed to stop taking her birth control pills at the 6-month mark after the wedding. We bought some pregnancy tests and then got to making a baby. A few weeks later, we were up at the family gathering. It was a quiet one with only family. It was also the first one we had been to in a while, and Diana knew I was feeling uncomfortable, as we had told Mom and Dad we were thinking of having a baby, and they were giving both of us the 3rd degree. Joan and Greg were just sitting back and watching, and I was getting tired of being put under the microscope by my family for everything. Every decision or choice that I had made was always the wrong one in their eyes. They had all the excuses. It was too early for us, we should focus on our careers. They thought having a child was not something we should be doing. Even Joan and Greg decided to say they thought we were stupid to consider kids early in our marriage. After a particularly belittling series of comments from Greg about how I must be so small because I would need so long to have a child, I was already a pathetic husband, and how Diana must be with me for my money, I'd had enough. For years, I had been taking from all of them, nothing I ever did was good enough for this so-called family. It was time to go. I'm going home. Why would you want to do that? We're your family, he responded. I know he never really wanted me here. However, in his mind, I had to come and go on his terms. For once, I let my anger and disappointment in them shine through. I don't know that you are my family. Everyone looked shocked. Family care for one another, sure. They have a poke at each other now and then, they fight and disagree, but they are there for one another. This family has never stood by me on anything. Whenever I need something, any of you, I said, in particular, pointing at my father, you give me every reason why I can't do something. You belittle me and tell me life isn't fair, so I should give up and just do what you think I should, which is never in my best interest. Not once in my entire life have you ever helped me. I have never had a positive fatherhood experience with you. Instead, you shower love and affection on that a-hole when he is the largest screw-up I know, starting to shout and now pointing at Greg, while letting my eyes bore into my father. You give your little princess anything she wants, she just has to pout or pretend that she's upset and you give in. I once had a great sister. However, as she gets older, she becomes more and more selfish. She has no idea how the world works because Daddy does everything for her. And you, I said, now not just pointing but glaring at Greg, have done nothing but beat me black and blue since I was a kid. I've learned that I could have gone to the police and had you in trouble with the law for years for what you did to me, mental and physical abuse. You're a bully of the worst kind who belittles others to hide his pathetic inadequacies. What's worse, I defended you to everyone and hid the evidence that covered my body. Just now you question my manhood when you yourself can't hold a woman for more than a month. You know why they leave you? It's because you think you're God's gift to womanhood when that is far from the truth in your mind. They're all wrong because your parents could do no wrong. Well, let me lay it out for you, big brother, you are a pathetic excuse of a man. Sure, you have muscles, but you have no idea how to use them for your betterment, no idea. That every word dropping out of your mouth makes you look like a total idiot, and most of the people cringe the moment you open your mouth. Just now you could do nothing but pour venom at me for some slight, trying to tear me down. But just because your pecker is under 5 in when it's hard and mine is larger and longer than yours when soft does not excuse your poor and pathetic comments. Grow up, I started looking at each of them. My family cares nothing for me. My sister and my mother could not care two shits about what happens to me, and the only time that Joan gives me any attention is when it comes to money. No one was saying anything, they were just staring at me as I continued my angry monologue, talking about money. Yeah, I have it. Do you know why I never give anything to any of you? Because, again, you don't care. I put myself through university because you refused to pay anything. I stood up and created the business with Norman, and you told me I was an idiot. Yet, once I was successful on my own merit, you think that you all deserve all the money that goes with it. You think because I have it, I should give it to you without any question. You all love money more than me. In your pathetic minds, it's the only reason you keep me around, thinking you might get some of it from me. As I understand it, your little construction business hardly keeps you afloat, as you live too big for your own capacity. So, you keep asking for my money. You keep badgering Diana to make me give some to you. But none of you can show any reason whatsoever that you should get a dime. I don't think you understand the concept of loving someone and letting them gift you money. And what's worse, I don't trust a single one of you. The only one here that gives anything of a rat's about me is my wife. I have only come to this stupid gathering for the last few years because she has asked me to. She keeps telling me family is important because she knows the void of not having any. But you know what? Starting right now, I will learn about it because I am done. You can all screw right off. Let's go, D. I turned and walked, grabbing my keys and wallet from the kitchen bench, and Diana and my phones. I was halfway out the door, Diana meekly following me, before Dad tried to respond. Now, listen up here, boy, I whirled back and glared at him, my mother sitting beside him, still shocked, withered at the force of my expression. No, Dad, now you listen here. My name is Harry. It's not boy, it's not mistake, it's not any other belittling name that you can all think of. It's Harry. And in case you need to spell it as you have never said it, that's spelled Harry. But you know what? Call me whatever you want from now on, because I am done with you and all of this family. Goodbye. Without another word, leaving everyone in shock, I walked out and jumped into the Camaro. Diana got in silently beside me. I tore out of the driveway, leaving tire marks and a lot of smoke burning as I tore away. I glanced back and saw them standing out the front, watching me go. It didn't take long before the call started. First Dad's phone, which I ignored. Then Mom's phone, even Greg and Joan had a go. When that didn't work, they started texting me. And then, even when that didn't work, they tried Diana. She wisely ignored everything. We had been on the road for almost an hour on the way home when Diana broke the silence. "Harry, are you okay?" No, I'm not, Dee. I've held all that in for almost as long as I can remember, and it keeps getting worse as time goes by. I am sorry, but after those comments from Greg today, I couldn't stand it anymore. I want nothing more to do with them. A tear came to my eye. I didn't like my family. I am not sure if I even loved my family anymore. But when I looked at Diana, I felt love. My family? Well, that feeling had faded years ago. I was now beginning to realize, for a long time, I had tolerated them, but that's about it. On reflection, it must have been a two-way street of just tolerating, from what I could recall of their treatment of me. But for the life of me, I could not understand why a family would treat someone the way they did. I started crying, mourning for the loss of something I never really understood that I had lost. As I drove home, Diana put an arm on my leg. "It's okay, my love. I understand. I am quite proud of you. Look, let's give it a few weeks, and I will step into the void for you. I really don't want to talk to them without you, but in this case, I will be your champion and make sure they understand that we are done with them. Are you okay?" She shook her head no. "Harry, like you, I'm not okay. That stuff that I told you, I know. I think we will have to speak about it soon if we are truly cutting your family out of our lives. We need to talk about it. I need to tell you some things, but I'm scared. And as I told you, what I know is not pretty, and I don't know everything. But you need to know that I love you so much, and my love, my life, my very soul is yours. So, I will fight for you. I will stand for my man." This time, she was trembling as she said that. I was angry and pissed off, but she was scared, and I felt myself rise above my feelings. "We can talk about it now. You're trembling. We can find somewhere to stop." "No, Harry. I need a little time to sort this out. There are things that I need to get hold of. Could you trust me? For a couple of weeks, duh? I don't know. I'm worried. I don't like the fear and sadness behind you right now," she teared up. "I know, baby, but if we do this right, and I need to get some things in order before we talk, okay? I don't like it, Dee, but yes, I will trust you. I get the feeling that this will all change our lives more than I want to admit. However, please don't take long. If anything, this afternoon showed me that I am struggling here in the dark with something I know nothing about, and it scares the out of me." We spent most of the drive home reassuring each other that it was going to be okay, but in the back of my mind, storm clouds were gathering. I could feel that Diana would rock my world with revelations that would not be pleasant, and she needed time to get ready for it. Damn, this was not going to be fun. We grabbed some leftovers from the fridge and ate a small meal before getting ready for bed. I would spend the afternoon in the office getting ready for some presentations in the coming weeks, but the morning would be Diana and I having breakfast with Jack and Cindy. As we got into bed and kissed, Di grabbed me and giggled. "Baby, did you mean what you said to Greg about comparing sizes?" I laughed for the first time in hours. Yes, being brothers, we did see each other naked a few times growing up. I'll be honest, I don't know about hard. I made that up. However, from what I do recall, Greg is a lot smaller than me, soft. I was just so mad that I perhaps went a little overboard. Baby, you know, while you may not believe that you have all his muscles, based on what you said, I think you have the two muscles that are much larger than him where it counts. 2. She giggled again. Yes, 2. The one down here, she said, pointing, and the one up here, she said, leaning in and kissing me between the eyes. You are the smartest man I know. You're rich yet humble. You have almost 1,000 employees worldwide, and even Norman would be lost without you. And not once until today have I seen you lose it at anyone. And today, you only threw at them what you thought of as truth and nothing more. As I said in the car, I was so proud of you. I love you, my wife. Suddenly, she looked at me in a sultry manner. Now, Mr. Other, do you think you have it in you to fill me up and make a baby with me, as you mentioned at your parents' today? My reply was nothing but doing what she wanted, and over the next hour, I filled her twice. The next few weeks were a little edgy. Work was busy as we prepared a new variation on my already famous plastics formula, nothing that would require a new or update to the patent, but an ability to yield more product without a drastic increase in the base materials, basically a more significant profit for us. Diana and I really got into baby making, and she spent time reading on the correct positions, frequency, clothing options, time of day, and everything else you do when you are trying for a baby. She was coming up to her most fertile time, so we would be having sex every 2 days to try and conceive. I was getting to come inside my wonderful wife every morning and every night. Who was I to complain? My family was still trying to smooth bridges. Apparently, my storm out caused a massive yelling match between the 4 of them left behind. I have no idea why they were yelling at each other. Sure, I was giving them some truths about them and their behavior towards me, but I was the one they were raving about, and I was no longer there. When my mother could not get hold of Diana or me, she tried calling Norman and Jack. Both were unaware of the issue with my family, and when I gave them the abridged version, they were sympathetic. After listening one afternoon, Jack was trying to be the peacemaker. Harry, you know at some point you're going to have to talk to them again. Why not sooner rather than later? You have said what you wanted, and as someone who saw the bruises on your body more than once growing up. I looked at him, and he held up his hand. Yes, a few of us teachers saw them, so did a few students. We put 2 and 2 together and figured it was either your father or Greg. It was one of the reasons many of us pushed to get you the scholarship. We knew we needed to get you out of that house before something happened that we would have had to take notice of regardless of you defending them. But you did, and you have grown so much. You have an amazing wife, a damn good company, and you will be a great father. However, and I hate that I am the one saying this, you also need your family. If you can get them on your terms, and I do stress now that you have had your say to them, your terms. I didn't want to admit it, however, he was right and also right that it needed to be on my terms. However, I also didn't know that my terms were about to be ignored. The following night at home, Diana and I had just finished making love and were relaxing on the bed when she brought up the topic of my family. Baby, I think I need to go and see your parents tomorrow. What? I almost spat at her. I was trying to come to terms with what Jack had said yesterday, but it was still hard. Cindy called me today and told me about your chat with Jack. Not all the details, but Jack is worried about you, and there is something that I need from them before I can talk to you and clear the air. Besides, if I go there and just talk to your mother without your dad or Greg, it is likely that there will not be any screaming. I was uneasy about this, and something wasn't right, however, I needed to trust her. Okay, you call me the moment you arrive and the moment you leave. Around 2 the next afternoon, Diana headed off in her Jeep. She texted me just after she arrived and before she went in. For the next 2 hours, I was worried. I started trying to call her after 7:30. By 8:30, I was getting frantic. I called my mother, the call went to voicemail. Mom, where is Diana? About 5 minutes later, I got a text back. She's not here. I got in my car and started driving. I also started calling everyone. I figured that I would drive the route between our house and my parents' house. Then, if something had happened, I would know. I prayed that nothing had happened to my wife, calling our friends one at a time. They had heard nothing, but everyone would keep watch and let me know the moment they heard something. Cindy was worried and tried to console me. I let her know I was driving towards my parents, the most likely route my wife would take, to see if I could find her. I made it all the way to my parents, and Diana's car was parked in the driveway. What the hell? Mom, a text saying she's not here. A sense of dread started to build in my stomach as I got out of the car. It was almost 10 at night, everyone would have heard my Camaro pull up. My mother met me at the door in her house robe and a panicked expression on her face. As I started walking up to the house, Harry, she tried to stop me. Harry, don't go in there. I pushed my way in the door, past my mother, her pleas falling on uncaring ears. Nothing was immediately amiss, but then I heard the noise. It came from my parents' bedroom. I charged through the doorway, and my world ended right there. Naked and strapped to the bed, on her stomach, hips raised by a pillow and her hips presented for use, was my wife. She was being screwed by my father. He was pushing his in and out of her, oblivious to the intrusion. My brother was watching and grinning, standing beside the bed and looking like he was just getting his steam back. It seemed that he had just done Diana. My sister was also there, naked, sitting on the side of the bed. I screamed, "What the hell is going on here?" "Just what it looks like, boy. We are using your wife how she likes it." He was grinning now. My brother looked at me and laughed, obviously getting off on the pain they were causing me. "She's always been our mistake, but look at how she loves it. Her body loves us in ways you never could." I couldn't see. Blackness was starting to close in, the storm clouds that kept circling my life breaking into a raging storm for my very being. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be happening. My wife, the woman who rescued me from these people and professed her undying love for me, the recipient of my love, the owner of my very soul, a soul that right now was being destroyed in front of me by my very family. "Trust me," she said. Trust me, and like a fool, I did. I stumbled backwards out of my parents' bedroom doorway, falling to the ground in the hallway. My mother touched my shoulder. I wasn't thinking. I pushed her back hard. She fell and looked at me for a minute, stunned. But I couldn't see. I was in pain. It felt like my heart was about to burst my chest. I heard my sister laugh. "I guess we can add the stupid cuck to his list of names now." The tears started. I got up, not sure what to do. My arms felt like lead. I could feel my pulse in my neck beating like a freight train. Back in the bedroom, I could hear my father groaning. He was climaxing in my wife. I stumbled further back down the hallway, grabbing the entry table by the front door. "No," I moaned. I heard them chuckle in the room. My mother was recovering from the push I gave her. She looked at me. "Harry, it will." That was the last I heard as I bolted out the door. I couldn't take the betrayal of Diana and my family anymore. I ran for my car. I have no idea how I got it started, however, I was out of there. I was driving like a bat out of hell, crying, and I had no idea if I would be alive in the next hour, but I didn't care. As far as I was concerned, my life was now over. Every reason for my life was undone, betrayed by the very person who had promised to bear my children. When the siren and lights started to chase me, I was driving on automatic, doing at least 60 over the speed limit. I didn't care. I sped on. I turned the corners, my tears gone, my rage now welling up inside me. I shifted to sports mode in my overpowered Camaro and made the police work for it. It didn't matter that they would already know the car. It didn't matter that my license plates would have traced them to my house. I drove. Screw them. They hadn't just been betrayed by everyone they cared about. Let them bring the whole force and catch me. If I was going down, I'd make it a spectacular end. Then, the thought caught me. But what about my cheating wife? What about my betraying family? If I die, then they would get everything. They would win. I was still leading the police on a chase. I was losing them, but surely they would have a chopper coming in, and there would be more cars ahead, I think. I speed-dialed Jack. "Hey, Harry, how's it going? How did you find her?" I had to chase back the tears. "No time to talk. I am in trouble, and I need you to come bail me out at the police station immediately. Call Norman and make sure my lawyer is updated and there as well. Jack, if you are my friend, and I think you and Norman may be my only friends in the world right now, then please do this now. As I don't know if I can hold it together much longer." "Harry, what's going on?" "Not now. I need to go. Call Norman now and come get me now." For the tricky bit, I drove myself to the local police station, a few kilometers from my house, and turned myself in. I beat for squad cars there that were chasing me by around for minutes and was already explaining myself to the officer at the front desk when they all came running in. "Harry, what the hell is going on, mate?" It was Tim Redwick. He was an officer in the local area and was a year ahead of me in school. We'd gotten to know each other a little over the years. He and I both loved cars, so he knew mine. He was a good guy. "I thought someone had stolen your car." He took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "Is Diana okay?" With the mention of Diana, I just fell to the floor and started sobbing. My nose started to run, and my chest heaved. Sure, I had been upset at my parents, but the adrenaline in my system had just run out, I suppose. They figured out I was no danger, my keys were with the front desk, and I was at the station. I was incoherent, and, to be honest, I had no idea what was going on around me for a while. Finally, someone helped me up from the reception floor, and I was moved. I felt a seat, a couch, and I sat down. I was brought tissues and water, but I sat there in anguish. I don't know how long I was there before I started to come back to myself, but I overheard voices. I've checked all incidents around the area, and there is no report of someone being involved with Diana's description that sounded like Tim. Harry told me that Diana was going to his parents' place yesterday evening. She was after some information that was important to them. Harry called me looking for her around 9:30, then he called me close to midnight asking me to get Norman and Paul here because he was in trouble. "What trouble is he in, Tim?" That sounded like Jack. "I don't know, Jack." Earlier, Harry took several squad cars, including me, on a merry chase. He's clearly in major distress right now, but also, no one got hurt, and he came right here, so something is very, very wrong. Has he spoken about Diana at all? That was Norman. I instantly felt arms around me. Cindy was there. "Shush, Harry, it's okay. We are here. What's happening? Where's Diana?" I fell apart, sobbing again, mumbling to myself. Cindy managed to pick out the words betrayed, parents, before I fell into what felt like madness again. I think I fell asleep, then I woke with a start. I was lying on a couch with a blanket over me, a pillow under my head. I had been dreaming. Diana was moaning and being double-teamed by my father and brother. My sister looked at me, smiling. My mother's voice came out of my wife's mouth, "You're just a scapegoat. Don't worry, boy, this will fix it all." I almost screamed, but I managed to keep it together. I was in some sort of a lounge. On the other side was Norman, June, sitting at a table. Tim was there too. However, Jack and Cindy, who I was sure were here earlier, were nowhere to be seen. My sudden movement caught their attention, and June was instantly by my side, her soothing voice quietly settling me down. "It's okay, Harry. You're okay. You're still at the police station. It is mid-morning, and it's going to be okay." She was stroking my back as I sat up. She moved to sit with me, she kept saying it was going to be okay. I had always wondered what maternal love would feel like. Now, June was acting more like a mother than mine ever had. "Where's Jack and Cindy? I thought that they were here earlier." Tim, Norman, and June looked at each other. "I don't know if you're ready to hear it, Harry," Norman spoke. I swallowed, I could feel my pulse start to race and my chest tighten. "Diana," they nodded. "I guess I need to hear it at some point." I steeled myself. "They are at the hospital with Diana." "Okay, the hospital? Wait, hospital?" I may have been in pain, I may have felt like everything had fallen apart, that everyone had betrayed me, but I still loved her. Was she hurt? Did they end up doing a sex act that somehow had hurt her? Norman spoke again. "Harry, we have spent the last few hours talking, and I think we have some idea of what happened to you last night. I know that if I were in your shoes, I would feel that what I went through was one of the worst betrayals ever. You feel that almost everyone betrayed you. We believe that what you must have seen pretty much shut your mind and body down. We managed to get 3 words out of you, and in short order, we had some ideas, so Tim here got a car over to your parents' place to try to find things out. Tim took over. Harry, there was trouble, and it isn't over yet. 2 officers knocked on your parents' door around 2 a.m. There were lights on, so they knew people were home. It took around 15 minutes of knocking before your mother came to the door. They didn't have probable cause allowing them to enter the house without a warrant, but the report from you was enough for them to question the occupants of the house. It took another 20 minutes of talking to your mother before your father came out and tried to send them away. His position was that there was nothing wrong. It was the only family in the house, and there had been no disturbances other than you coming to their place earlier and having an argument with your wife. He paused to look at me a moment. "How are you holding up so far?" he asked. I ground my teeth. That is not what happened, but I sense it's not the end of the story. I'll keep it together for now. Tim nodded. Norman and June were also listening. They had not yet heard the report as I was not awake. They just knew that Diana was in the hospital being looked after. The result was that the officers had nothing else to go on and no further reason to stay, so they were leaving. However, as your mother closed the door, your brother came out of the master bedroom, naked and mouthing off. "Dad, hurry up, she's waking up, and we need to drug her again before we can screw her." "What, Norman?" June and I screamed at Tim almost at the same time. We were all on our feet in an instant. Harry, Diana was drugged and assaulted. I could again feel my world closing in. My chest tightened. I started to hyperventilate. This time, my anguish was for Diana. I was there. I was there. She had been strapped down and wasn't moving, but I never really noticed. OMG, what have I done? I left her there. I felt I was going into shock again. I was in the room, and I had thought. I began to fall back down, but June held me up. "Harry," she whispered in my ear. "Harry, don't fall. Diana needs you right now." She was right. I had betrayed her worse than I felt she had betrayed me. I needed to hear the rest. My resolve locked into place. I think they sensed it. "Tim, can you keep going?" "I need to hear this," he nodded. "Ed, it's okay, Harry. This is hard for everyone." He took a deep breath. Apparently, it took a moment of Greg and your parents with a deer-in-the-headlights look before they tried to react. First, your father tried to push the door closed. However, the lead officer pushed the door in and burst into your parents' bedroom where Greg had appeared from next. Your brother took off and ran into the back of the house. The officer would have pursued him, however, he had found Diana. His partner was calling for backup and drawing a weapon as the situation was escalating quickly. They found Diana strapped to the bed, crying and screaming for you. Your sister was beside her, naked and lying back, eyes closed, getting off on the fact that Diana was helpless and couldn't do anything. In short order, there were an additional 4 officers on the scene, and within minutes, all of them were in the house and more backup was on the way. Your sister was arrested there on the floor beside the bed, your mother in the front doorway. However, Greg and your father got away. Apparently, they both ran to the back of the house and teamed up on one of the officers searching for them, then they did the same to a second. Both officers are in the hospital, and your father and brother are on the run. As for Diana, she was untied, and the officers covered her with a blanket until the ambulance arrived. Harry, she has some understanding that you were there last night. She's in a mess worse than you. She's sedated but keeps asking for you, even asleep. She keeps saying that she needs to protect you. Well, I need to go then. I need to go to her. I need you to hang on a few minutes, Harry. Due to everything that is happening, you are not under arrest, however, I need a statement from you, and there is some processing to be done. Diana's in the hospital, and she's safe right now. When can we get him to his wife? June asked. Soon. Harry, can I take your statement? The sooner we do this, the better. So for the next hour, I told Tim, along with Norman and June who had been permitted to stay, what had happened. How Diana had gone to talk to my parents following my blow-up at them. I explained how there were some things that she needed to have a serious talk with me about my family. I expanded further, letting them know how I had been freaking out. I headed to my parents after I got the text message that she wasn't there, how I found everyone in my family practically naked, and my mother in a robe, and had barged in to see my father screwing Diana, who was tied to the bed. I related to them how at the time, I had thought that Diana was a willing participant, and how I fell out and ran, how I was fleeing in pain, driving away, and just wanting everything to end. I told my audience how I came back to my senses once I started getting chased by the police and went straight here to hand myself in, calling Jack to get Norman and a lawyer. I explained how I collapsed and knew almost nothing other than a few flashes once time arrived, and I fell to the ground, waking up here a little while ago. Tim was making some notes, and he asked about the names and cut comments. Something was going through his brain. Finally, I explained, my father has never called me by my name. Greg has always called me the mistake, so I suppose they thought the cut comment was belittling me further. Harry, this is a sensitive one. When we were at school, you would often come to school in clothes too big, and there was a rumor that you were always walking funny and had bruising. When medical staff did the initial inspection of Diana, they found that not only had she been restrained, but she also had bruising on her back consistent with being beaten. Would this be related? I could feel the fuse to my anger was lit. My family had beaten my wife as I had been drugged and assaulted. The woman I would walk barefoot over broken glass for was beaten because of me. I needed to be strong. I explained how I was beaten by Greg when he felt like it growing up, how the system worked where I was barely tolerated. I told them how my achievements were belittled. It took perhaps another 10 minutes till Tim was satisfied, and he asked us to wait so he could file his report. It took perhaps another 20 minutes before Tim was back. Okay, guys, there are a few things here. First of all, the charges around speeding and evading police arrest have been dropped in favor of you undertaking a defensive driving test to further smooth things over. I took the liberty to talk to the station commander and put you in for generous sponsorship of a few of our upcoming police charity events. This was by far the biggest issue for you legally, so you are now free. Before I could move, he continued, I am arranging a car to take you to the hospital. I don't think you are in any condition to drive. Looking at Norman and June, he added, we can also take both of you if you like. However, there is one other issue we looked at, Tim, your mother and sister are being held here. He let that sink in. Your mother, she's asking for you. This one was easy. I don't care. I need to get to Diana, I replied. Tim nodded, and we got the rest sorted out. Tim ended up taking me directly to the hospital in his police cruiser, while Norman and June took my car home, letting me know they would grab some clothes for both Diana and me. They would then drive up to the hospital and meet us when we arrived. I was taken directly to the private suite that Diana had been given. After coming out of emergency and confirming her status and insurance, she was being given the top-tier treatment. She was hooked up to a number of machines and was resting fitfully when I entered the room. I went directly to her bed, kissed her forehead, and held her hand. I don't know if she knew if I was there or not, but she settled down right away. Jack and Cindy came in not moments later, and without releasing my grip on Diana's hand, we hugged and cried. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. People were coming and going, Norman, June, Jack, Cindy, Tim, some of the team at work that knew both Diana and me. Word had gotten around that Diana and I were in some serious trouble, and a lot of the city was getting behind us. We got cards and flowers from so many different people, most I had no idea who they were. That first night, I slept in the chair beside Diana. I think it was about 2 a.m. when I felt a hand on my head, and I looked up to see her awake and just staring at me. My hand had not left her since I arrived. I am so sorry, was the first thing out of my mouth. Please tell me you love me. Her eyes desperately looked into mine. I love you so much. To think that, shush. She used a weak hand to guide me in, and I kissed her sweet and gentle. Then I crawled onto the bed, trying not to disturb any of the equipment attached to her, and I wrapped my arms around my wife, my beautiful wife that had been through so much. Then, we cried together until we both fell asleep. The following day, the hospital staff brought in a unique double hospital bed so I could stay with Diana. She had an 4-drip and was on some painkillers and other drugs, so she and, by extension, we would be in the hospital for a few days. Later in the afternoon, Tim and a female officer came by. With them were Norman, June, Jack, Cindy, and Paul, my lawyer. Tim and the female officer, Karen, needed a statement, so Diana asked Paul, as our lawyer, and me to stay as she talked. It was almost as horrific as what I had imagined. Diana had gone around to my parents to talk to my mother about my fight with them. She had wanted to be an olive branch between them and me, however, she also wanted a few of my documents, including my original birth certificate and a couple of other legal documents. She was there for around 20 minutes, sitting with my mother on the couch. We always sat on that couch at their place when Joan brought them all a cup of tea. She recalled the tea tasting a little strong but didn't think anything of it until she woke up naked and strapped face down on the bed a few hours later. "Oh look, the mistake's little wifey is awake now," laughed Greg, grabbing her hair and spitting in her face. "Mr. High and Mighty Mistake thinks this one is so amazing, so pure, that there is nothing she can do wrong. Well, guess what? We're going to make you ours, and the mistake is going to raise kids that aren't his." Greg laughed hysterically. "Enough," said my dad, walking into the room with both Joan and my mother. "The boy's little princess didn't play ball with us the last few years after everything we did for her. She thinks we forgot and that she's untouchable. Well, now she's going to learn how this family really works." He looked at my sister. "Joan, go and get everything. Martha, make sure that we are not disturbed." Greg welcomed the boy's wife just like you would welcome him home. With that, Greg got a sadistic grin on his face and began to drool and leaned over, raising one fist above his head, and struck Diana on the left side of the back. Diana screamed. "Welcome to the family." With that, Joan re-entered the room carrying some vials and needles. She had a big smile on her face. Again, my dad instructed and directed, "Now everyone gets ready. It's time to take care of the guest of honor." Everyone started undressing. "Just to explain everything to you, my dear," my father leaned into Diana, "I know you are not going to join us willingly, so we're going to give you a little hand." He continued, "My beautiful Joan has with her a strong sedative. They use this for a few different things, including brain surgery, where the patient needs to be awake but unable to feel. With this drug variant, if we have it right, you will be semi-aware and feel everything, but you won't respond or move." At this point, Diana began to struggle against the bonds. Greg's fist slammed into her back. Diana cried out, then stayed still. "That's better. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to join this family function. Greg and I are going to screw you. We're going to do this every 2 weeks until you're pregnant, and you're going to give the boy his treatment so that when you're pregnant, you will make it look like it's his." He laughed. Diana tried to scream. Greg raised a fist, and Diana flinched. The pain in her back was already aching, Diana recalled. "Now, Diana, as I was saying, you're going not to say a thing to the boy, or it's all going to come down on you," my father threatened. "He will kick you out, and you will be homeless. So tonight, we are all going to have our turns with you, and tomorrow you're going to go home and let him know." Late into the night, and it was easier to stay here, he didn't know at the time that I had been trying to call Diana, and my mother had responded with a text saying Diana wasn't there. Diana, now awake, recounted her experience. She believed they had taken her several times. At one point, she thought she heard Harry's voice and tried to wake up enough to scream, but she couldn't. The next thing she recalled was a blanket being put over her as she came back to some sense of reality. She then remembered coming in and out of dreams and waking up with Harry beside her. By this point, she was crying almost uncontrollably. Diana, my wife, had been beaten, abused, assaulted, taken against her will, drugged, and tortured by people who were supposed to be my family. I wasn't upset anymore, I was angry. No, as I listened to her tell the story, I was beyond angry. I was going to destroy them, my father, my mother, my sister, and yes, even my neglecting mother. They would have to crawl down into the darkest pit of hell to find any let-up from the wrath that was coming their way. How could any sane person do what they did? For the umpteenth time in my life, I wondered what I had done to them to have them treat me like this. After taking Diana's statement, Tim and Karen bid us farewell and would come and check on us later. Everyone else was about to come back into the room when a thought struck me. I asked everyone to give Diana and me some more time. They were a little perplexed, but sensing that this was something serious, they closed the door and let us be. They knew a little of what had happened, but I doubted that our friends knew the whole story. As they closed the door, Diana looked a little worried, and I will admit that I was also a little concerned. My wife had been abused before we met and had also just been used by my own family. I wasn't sure what problems we were facing between us, physically, sexually, psychologically, but I knew that she had not gone out to betray me. It might hurt, but I would need to be there for her. Right now, she was still processing. I knew, at the very least, we were going to need a damn good psychologist for both of us. But at this point, I was pretty sure that Diana was in a lot more pain than I was. I leaned back on the bed and wrapped my arms around her, just holding her for a few minutes. No words were exchanged, and Diana broke down again, sobbing. Her hand tightened like a vice on my arm. I knew that this would be something that would happen a lot for the next little while. I was sad. We had an incredible relationship, but it had been tarnished. Damn them! Why did they have to do something so cruel to me, one of their own blood? That thought brought back the anger, and I seethed for a moment. But the thought of blood brought the idea from before back to mind, which Diana had just mentioned to me. As Diana settled down again, I knew I had to ask some tough questions. Dee, I am not going to ask if you're okay, I know you're not. I'm not, and I want you to know that I am still totally and absolutely in love with you even after everything. So, I can't tell you we're going to get through this, and I would like to get through it together, okay? She turned and looked at me. She had taken off her glasses, and her beautiful brown eyes were ringed red, her face blotchy, her nose running. She was a woman in distress, but as she looked at me, I think she knew I wasn't going to run. She was searching for hope and needed an anchor. I so desperately wanted to be that, but I had to know more.